Not able to hear anything.
I think we're just all muted waiting.
Thank you.
Better? Whoops. You gotta turn off the sound on one of your computers there.
Whew.
So, do you have the sound on the computer?
This is the one that's running the owl. I cannot find my handy dandy dongle that usually allows me to run things on here.
John, can you hear us still? Okay, alright, good.
Yeah.
So this is the only thing that's on. Okay, so let's try it again. Now it's 7:02.
Oh my.
7:02, this is the May meeting of the Bristol Planning Commission. Call us to order. Like I said, it's 7:02. So the first item is to review the agenda for any removal adjustments of any items.
No items or anything. I just, on a personal note, would mention that I have to slip out about 7:45. I apologize for having to leave a little early.
Okay, thank you for that, John. I think we were gonna have Kevin LaRose come and chit chat with us today. He indicated he wanted to be here about 7-ish.
Yeah.
So if he does come in, we will move item 5, new business, up to accommodate his schedule. He has to leave at
7:45.
7:45 as well. So, I don't see any other changes other than that. Next item is public comment. Is there any public comment? Do we have?
Jim, like to say something?
No.
No comment.
Okay. Next item is organizational business. This was tabled last meeting. It's an organizational meeting thing. The discussion is to review policies and procedures. I guess I'll just open up the floor for anybody that has any comments on policies and procedures.
Hi, Jen, listen, if you scroll down, it says somewhere, it indicates that the section was deleted. Is that true?
This highlighted section?
No, it said, on my screen, it popped up the whole section near the bottom.
Yep.
Right
Right
there.
there.
The
7.3.
Yes. I just didn't know if that really meant that it was deleted, the whole section, or the title, or what that meant.
I don't, I don't think we have deleted that section.
I will make a note that,
I think somebody had track changes on and saved it that way.
yeah,
That's what it looks like.
that
Okay,
this is the only document I was able to find from last year's. So my note for this is that it needs to be updated to reflect revised and approved for May 20th, 2025.
No, we didn't make any changes in 2025.
Well,
Not yet.
not yet, but
We revised it last year, 2024, to make it the 5-year.
Yeah, so. So that document has, I found it a while ago and I thought I had distributed that. Six 2024.
yep.
Let me send that to you.
That is the document I have. I pulled it from last year's agenda documents.
This one here,
Mhm.
But you said it said 2021 on it.
I know,
The header did not get changed. If
Is
it's
that-
only the PDF, that means that somebody didn't go create a new document to PDF.
yeah, this needs to be updated on the PDF I have.
So that
Is
means
that
that,
what's going on?
Is this, I pulled this directly from last year's
Yeah,
meetings.
what's-
It does
What-
have the changes that we made in it.
Does it?
Yeah,
So the doc that I'm looking at has the date on it. And the file name has the date on it.
Yeah,
Is
that's,
that-
yeah, that's what I
Okay.
have.
Okay. Okay, so that is an error, then that it. Maybe we have somebody else?
Patty,
How you doing?
not
Hi.
bad.
like a,
So let's set this aside. Kevin LaRose just joined us. Sit up right here with us if you want.
Sure. This all right?
Oh, yeah.
Let's get assigned seats.
Yeah, first come, first served.
That's good. Good way to do it.
Okay, so we're backing up a little bit. We will move to item 5, new business. We've asked Kevin LaRose to come here as a Class B designer and talk a little bit about our infrastructure discussions from a designer's point of view. And we've talked to
Jill.
the water lady, Jill.
Jill.
And we also had a series of Newbury College students with a class they did in January, look at 4 different aspects of Bristol and Northern with wastewater, so I don't know, some of the things that they suggested are not necessarily what is what we believe is consistent with state regulations. So we're kind of interested in what you may understand as to direction the state may be going to change certain things, what there is today and what within, as you're familiar with our zoning regs, how we should enable flexibility and particularly wastewater to ultimately create housing and more dense housing,
Yeah. It's a loaded question.
isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my experiences are, we've had a number of projects we've done right here in the village, which to me is probably really more where you're asking about, what I consider the old village, where it's, where you want the density, keep the density and I know, right now one of the things that designers are asking the state to consider is lessening the minimum number of bedrooms for a standard home, whatever, whatever
What is
you're,
a bedroom?
Well, we don't go by the realtor's definition. Our definition is basically a space used for sleeping. So, but for a standard single-family home, right now, that's 2 bedrooms. Why can't it be 1 bedroom? Maybe that's some folks, that's all they want or need.
but banks don't like that,
Well, I won't even try to answer the bank's concern.
the issue, but I don't know.
Maybe, but when you're looking at, I did some quick calcs before I came over, but just a single family home, 3-bedroom standard house, in-ground system, you have to have a backup site. If you just use it as the rules give it to you, I mean, you're looking at a space need of about, let's get their pens out. It's 85 feet long and it is about 40 feet wide, 50 feet wide. No, I take it back, 68, there you go, 68 by 85. And that gives us the state's requirement for 25 feet to the property line, all the way around an in-ground system. There are a few rare instances where you can ask for that to be reduced to some more, in my opinion, reasonable number. 25 is tough, but that's a large space that needs to be held in reserve for the primary, the backup, and the required setback distance around that system. You know, particularly in a place here where there are no water supplies that we're gonna impact and I don't know, I always think of my own office at 25 West Street, and I don't know what we'll ever be able to do with the septic there. You know, we have the building, about 15 feet between the building and the sidewalk, and a gravel parking lot, and then it drops to the Naven River, drops quickly to the Naven River, so, you know, I probably should have opened up, I think we should have a municipal system, that's what I think we should have. You know, we want people, we want businesses, we need a municipal wastewater system, we need to bone up that thing down there and make it bigger, you know, you know, where's the Federated Church ever gonna put their wastewater system when that thing ever goes, you know? But back to the problem at hand, it's, the state is looking at doing some updating in the rules, which, I wouldn't think we're gonna see anything this year, I might think of something next year. They did a rule update, a major rule update in 2023. They did a few administrative updates to it last year, but I don't think we're gonna see anything major changes in the rules until at least 2026. But they're limited, they're really limiting, and not necessarily all in a bad way, but back to the bedrooms, you know, that's 3-bedroom house, that means that's 6 people. You know, that's 6 people generating 60 gallons of wastewater per person per day. That's a lot of wastewater. Let's use my own home as an example, where we'll call it whatever quasi-traditional family is. There's 4 of us that live there, 3 bedrooms, or meter water, so I know, but we do about 185 gallons of wastewater a day when everybody's there and using the system, you know, showers and bathing and washing and you know, it's tough, you know, there's not been a lot of movement in the state, unfortunately, and to move us in the direction of, you know, allowing the numbers to reflect how traditionally the family unit is now versus it might have been 50 years ago, 30 years ago, and also just the things we've had, whether it's low flow shower heads and, you know, front loading, low flow washing machines and dishwashers, and all those things use half the water that they used even 15 or 20 years ago. But unfortunately, like I said, we're still using those same numbers, and back to that large area that I described on the, you know, for a septic system. But you know, when we come across a project where somebody's trying to create another bedroom or another, maybe an accessory unit or something like that, typically in the village, what we often try to get them to look at doing, and it's hard because now you're gonna front load that project with a little bit more money, but it's to basically abandon the system that they do have and then come up with something that we can take on what they have now today and then what they want tomorrow, you know, for that, whether it's the extra bedroom or the accessory, and then look at, we can do things to modify that space requirement I mentioned earlier. We can start taking some reductions if we add in some more stone underneath the pipe, you know, whether the standard is 12 inches, but maybe go to 18 or 24 inches, and that allows you to take a 33 or 25 or 33% reduction on that system. But another option that again, is money, is, you know, encouraging people to use a pressurized system, even on an in-ground system. And nobody likes to do it, but it allows us to basically eliminate, you know, I mentioned, let's just say you need 2 trenches, regardless of their length. You need 2 primary, 2 backup. If you pressurize it, regardless of what you do with the stone reduction, you can eliminate the 4th trench altogether. So you're basically gonna build out 3, and you don't have to have that replacement area.
I'm ignorant of the pressurizing,
Pressurizing a typical standard
Just
gravity in-ground system.
push it through.
Push it through, yep, and use the whole bed as opposed to,
I see.
you're only using maybe the length of this table, you know, in a normal, even when you get dosed with an old wash machine, which is what, 45, 50 gallons, you might use the first 6 feet, and it'll just keep doing that until it just can't take anymore, and then it'll move on to the next 4 or 5, 6 feet. But where you put it under pressure, you're using however many trenches at whatever length they are, you're using the entire thing, which is how we design a system, say out in Addison or Panton or Ferrisburg. You have a mound, which is oftentimes large, and they're under pressure to really minimize how much effluent you're putting down in a per square foot basis. You know, you're trying to limit the linear loading rates when you get out there, because the soils just can't take them, particularly this week, last week. You know, they're inundated with water, they're very tight soils as they are, fine textured, and so what we're trying to do is limit the water, so you spread it out. So they were just taking that same concept and applying it here, even though you could load up what sits underneath this village with probably all that as a county, but you you know, with the rules that we do have, that's the best way.
And
Do-
the state's unlikely to ever change that view that the soils don't matter. I mean,
They definitely matter, but they.
I know they matter, but
Yeah.
the rules don't.
No, what they did don't hold me to it, it's either the 2019 rules, the 2023, I think it was the 2019 rules, we used to do what a lot of people will still refer to as a percolation test, which is where we used to dig the hole with the postal digger, put the 4-inch pipe, pour the water, count. In addition, you have to do a test pit, which is where you have a backhoe excavator there, you dig the hole, and then you're logging that profile of the soil. The percolation test would tell you how fast can that soil take water. The test pit would tell you what is the texture, colors, et cetera, of that, which is then gonna generate the loading rate for that particular soil type. So what they did in the 2019 rules is they didn't eliminate the percolation test, they just said, we're gonna make it optional, but you can do it, or you're gonna use our loading rates, but you're gonna use whatever's slower. So there's no benefit to doing the perk test, you might as well just do the test bit. But, you know, here in town, we're often blessed, most of the village, with the coarse sands, which is your max loading rate, which is 1.5 gallons per square foot per day. But it immediately, if you get to like a loamy sand, you know, just the next texture class really below that, you immediately drop to 1 gallon per square foot per day. You just basically added 50% to the size of that system just by that one, and, you know, and you get just up past where I live, you know, like around 100, 110, 120 North Street, the soils start changing fast up there. You know, they're not nearly as good as your house or my office or, you know, right here. You know, they just get, they're good, but they're not as good up there. So that's often something we juggle with, to pressurizing, looking at adding more stone, doing anything we can do to minimize that footprint, because that 25 feet. Now I said you can reduce it, you can ask the state permission, but if you have a neighbor that wants to be neighborly, we're doing a project right now on Basin Street. You know, the recreation of those two old homes that used to be down there, and one of them were just, as it is, tight to create that septic, a house, an outbuilding on a lot that's, whatever those things are, 4/10 of an acre, which isn't that much room, when you really think about adding all that infrastructure and meeting the setback. So the septic system, we're gonna push into that 25-foot setback by about 10 feet, and the neighbors that are there and live there are, you know, supporting that and okay with that, so, which is wonderful. It gives us a little more room to work in there, you know, and then all that's assuming the grades and everything else work to get from point A to point B with your wastewater, and, you know, the system can't, you know, run up and down the hill, it has to run along the hill, and,
So our single-family dwelling unit lot size in the HDR is 40,000 square feet.
10,000,
10,000
quarter
square
acre,
feet.
or
Yeah.
ish.
Yeah,
So I mean, that is a relatively large lot size then, based on what our minimum is.
10,000 or
No,
that down there?
That down there,
Yeah, I mean, it's 4/10, so it's
around
yeah,
20.
20,000, yeah, so it's doubled it, but the grades are not helping down there, just the way that particular lot is shaped. So those are the things, it's a case by case, like you're never gonna fix that as a blanket thing, but, yeah, I mean, the 10,000, I'm all in favor, build, but, 10,000 is sometimes tough, you know, to make, you know, those things fit, because the septic has to be 25 feet from all the property lines, it has to be 10 feet, or 25 in some instances, some systems from the driveway, you gotta be at least 20 or 35 or 75 feet from the house, depending on, you know, where it is relative to the house vertically. Does the house have drainage around it? All those things, and so, and all of a sudden that, you know, keeps pushing you out to spaces you don't have much of, so, and that's where, like I said, I just go with, let's just build a whole new system, you know, and then we can, cause if you wanted to add a bedroom, you maybe needed a bedroom for family space, or you add an accessory for family member or some rental income or whatever, you have to demonstrate to the state, regardless of whatever you have for a type of system, that you have a backup site that meets all of the rules, and you have to have a primary and a backup for that either extra bedroom or accessory or whatever it's gonna be. So in addition to the one system that's already there, we just now have to create space for 3 more. So, but I'm just like, let's just go to 2 systems, the primary and the backup, or just the primary under pressure
Yeah.
for whatever it is to, basically minimize that demand on that space, because once it's there, you can't garden on it, you can use it as recreation space and lawn space, or, whatever you wanna do, but it's not a lot of options what you can do with it, so.
The students brought up the, like green infrastructure and like gray water kind of filtration systems, but it doesn't seem like the state is the most cooperative towards that. What is?
Yeah, no, it's funny too, and Vermont prides itself on being, I don't know, green and ahead of the curve on a lot of things, and I don't know, but probably we are. But wastewater, we're not, we're way behind, and I don't think there's any push right now for reclamation of the gray water to use it for something else, or splitting the system, because particularly in the village, and maybe, I know you guys are in the village, maybe you have or had the, you had the two separate systems, there was the black water system and then the gray water system in a lot of the older homes, but the minute somebody like me comes on site and we're doing as I described, new systems, and whatever capacity gonna be, everything now has to go to the same space, because the state doesn't, for most every case, the state does not differentiate between black and gray. The only time it does is like a primitive camp type application, but.
That's interesting. When I was in school, that was the new way to do things.
It's always gonna be the next new way to do things,
Of
right?
course, that was like 100 years ago.
I was in school, it seems like 50 years ago, so yeah, we'll see what another 50 years is. Yeah, but no, I think there's a lot of wonderful things that are, and it seems, what we hear, it always comes back to, well, we're in a cold climate. Yep, but it seems like some of the other cold climate states are doing some different things that could help with that. But right now, all you can do is, to take any kind of real reduction from that is to put in some sort of pre-treatment unit, where you can then treat the effluent, black and gray, and then you can get another massive reduction in the size, but you have a very large upfront cost of
Yeah.
$15,000 to $20,000 for one of those units, especially your own personal municipal septic system, processor, and then that requires a inspection / certification every year in perpetuity by your permit that you would be issued by the state. They're a great thing, they have wonderful application. I got a project in Ferrisburg Hollow that we did last year, and their backyard might be the size of this room, and it's tough soils, and so we put a bottomless sand filter in, which is basically 2 of these tables, like literally that high and this wide, but it's built with timber frames around it, and there's one here and one over there, and we dropped the pre-treatment because that allowed us to build half as much square footage of these as was needed without the pre-treatment, and it allows them to have a little bit of their back lawn to use for whatever they want to use it for, but a wonderful tool, but oftentimes not attainable by the masses financially, septic systems everything's expensive, but septic systems are expensive right now. As I said, there's nothing sexy about a septic system. People don't mind dropping 30, 40, 50 grand in a kitchen or a bathroom rental, but not their septic system. But that's.
In our town plan and our regulations, there's been a push for planning and developments and cluster septics systems. How would you see that as being kind of expanded upon, other than the struggle of getting people to come together on a cluster septic system, but.
Yeah, that has its own set of, it's like sharing a driveway or anything else, it requires conversation in this day and age that can prove to be difficult. But to your point, I think it's a great option for minimizing that space. Everything I've said doesn't change, but instead of having, I don't know, can I talk with my your papers? Instead of having, 4 septic systems that are, spread all out, we can maybe have just one that's much smaller, but you don't have to have all the separation space in between them. And that's where the shared system is really awesome, because you're not, on an in-ground system, you're supposed to be 8 feet between trench to trench on one septic system to another one. But if we did a shared system off, was it Ezra's Way off Fitch Avenue? There's 4 houses in there right now, and they all share the exact same septic system. It happens to be on the lowest lot, which is behind the old Elder House. But that's one septic system for all 4 of those lots in there, and that was the only way that was ever gonna work, because again, back to the way the lots are, they're great, there's a nice little relief vertically to kind of make them look separately and different. But again, when you start putting septic systems on top of, higher than a home, with a home around here, which is most likely gonna have some sort of drainage system, that's 75 feet you need to have between that system and that house, assuming they're straight up the hill from each other. But given that they took advantage of the 10,000 square foot lots, and those are, I think, just a hair over 10,000 square feet. I'm all on board, I think it's a great idea, but it does prove to be difficult at times, so that was a wonderful application for our shared system. That we could just install under pressure, the whole thing, we took every discounted option we could get on the system size. We did that with Alan Heisinger when he was still Green Mountain Engineering, so. Yeah, I think it's a great way to do it, but again, it obviously comes with its own set of, but you have to, I guess, choose what you wanna fight, the space or, trying to get along with your neighbor to, other than some occasional mowing or however often one wants to mow, and if it is under pressure, a modest, power bill, it's not much to it. I mean, on that particular one, everybody has their own septic tank, so you're responsible for your own pumping, your own septic tank filter cleaning, and the pump station, as long as it's working. I mean, there's no real service or work needs on it until the pump is done, but hopefully at that point, in a case like there, where they have like a homeowners association that describes how we're gonna share in the cost of maintaining our driveway or whatever, well, it's the same thing, how are we gonna, take care of that, sharing that cost, amongst the 2 or 3, 4 neighbor or more in a cluster type development. And I believe, the co-housing, that's, I surveyed that, but we didn't do the design. I think that was Green Mountain Engineering and Lincoln Applied Geology, but I think that's one very large septic system in there. I don't know what they call it, but I'll call it the green common land in the middle, almost like a little park, if you will. But that's one massive system for every building in there. And what is there, 6, 8 buildings in there? Yeah, so, yeah, I think they're great, because again, you're not having to have that separation space between system to system. Your system footprint's bigger, but you've taken away all the in-between setbacks that are required. If it's in the village, like I said, you're looking at most likely an in-ground system, so those are 8 feet, 10 feet, but if you get into any sort of raised system, that's gonna jump to 25 feet, but still, even if it was that type of system, you can. And I know the mound is often a dirty word too, but again, if you build a mound, you don't have to have any backup system, so I wouldn't want a mound, say, at my house. I have a very flat lot and whatever, but if you had, say, maybe these places that, down on Basin Street or something where you have some relief, where you can build the mound into the terrain, where you can, I think, minimize what people perceive it to look like out in, say, West Addison, where it's very long, tall, and, but you don't need a backup site, which is wonderful. If you have a 3-bedroom house, you need 420 square feet, so 10 by 42, done.
Yeah.
I have a question, and my dog's barking. I have a question. I'm going to show my septic ignorance here. Is there any limit to how many homes can be on one septic, or is it just the size so you have enough, like a field or whatever? Is there kind of a limit at some point?
No, the only
Or is it just-
limitation is one's license. So my license caps me out at 1,350 gallons a day, and beyond that, you get a professional engineer, what the state calls a class 1 designer, whereas I'm a class BW. And then if you go above 2,000 gallons a day, you would have to get a hydrogeologist also involved, which would be somebody, let's say, like Steve Revelle from Lincoln Applied Geology. You need 1 or 2 more consultants, but no limitation to that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any other questions for Kevin?
Yeah, just one. I was thinking, I was kind of reading on the idea of pre-treatment and just ideas of water saving devices. And I know that, oh my gosh, Efficiency Vermont can help with that. Is that only for the owner once somebody moves into that home, that owner, or do they help builders if they're building homes, or is it just the property owner?
I believe they help the owner and the builder, because, you know, and that program's expanded so much where it's gone from light bulbs and shower heads to, you know, helping out with the expertise and the insulation. We've actually had
Yeah.
them come and look at our house to help us with, improving our insulation and, you know, increasing our R value, so
Yeah.
and I think, Matt Sharp still works there, he's right here in town. I think he still works, for Efficiency Vermont, he'd be a great resource if somebody wanted to talk more about that,
Great, thanks.
yeah.
Anybody else?
Great primer on all that. Thank you.
Welcome, John.
So you had mentioned about municipal systems earlier. And I don't know if you wanna expound on that a little bit. I mean, we've got, cause in my mind, there's two things going on here. We've got this existing municipal system that was built to get the downtown business blocks out of the bind, that half the blocks at one point were empty because they didn't have anything but cesspools along
Yeah.
through there. And that's kind of expanded out a little bit. Now, if I understand it properly, there is a lot of high-strength waste because
Yeah.
of restaurants that have that system at capacity, but the flow rates are not. There's capacity to flow, but there's
Correct.
and so, in my mind, a restaurant is a very fitting thing for Main Street, so I don't see that problem changing a whole lot. I mean, there's talk about doing pre-treatment, all this other kind of stuff. But that is basically an oversized
It is.
in-ground system. And then there's also the other aspect of putting in a municipal system that's tertiary, you know, primary, secondary, tertiary
Yeah.
treatment like Virgins and Middlebury have, which seems like all the 1950s federal funds to put those in are long gone, and they're very expensive systems. So I don't know, I'd like to hear your perspective on how that all works out
Yeah.
because there's in my, what I've heard, and maybe I'm misinterpreting it, is, boy, that municipal system we have today, that's basically for Maine, we should expand that and pick up a wider array of housing or whatever with that system.
Well, I'll preface this by saying I don't do any designs of municipal water or wastewater. I mean, my education, my background is civil engineering, but as life and career took me in a direction, I don't do that kind of work. I do a lot of permitting for folks in Virginia and Middlebury and helping them tie into the municipal system. And I don't know anything about funding. I do know Waitsfield or whatever, they've got a pile of money and they're doing some massive expansion of their municipal system. I don't know where that money comes from. I don't deal with that kind of stuff, so I guess I don't listen for that stuff. And I keep throwing out names, hope these people don't mind, but Steve Palmer, our one and only engineer for our town, VTM engineering out of Heinsberg, he would be another good guest for you. But we were actually just having this conversation the other day about that particular system, and as I understand it, yes, the BOD, the high strength wastewater, and it kind of goes back a little bit to, yeah, we've done all these wonderful modifications to our usage of water to limit that. So even in your single family home, the strength is much higher than it ever used to be, because we're using half the water than we used to use, because that's what the shower heads and the washing machines and the dishwashers, they all do all those wonderful things. And there's a lot of capacity down there, but the problem is figuring out whose responsibility is it gonna be to lower the BOD, so that thing can be loaded up much, larger than it is now. Now, whether that's the town, the downtown folks that are, above my pay grade, but yeah, I think that's an option, and probably a much simpler, cheaper option than any sort of large scale municipal, wastewater system, but I don't know, I sometimes have these crazy ideas thinking out of the box, and I think of like the rec field and the high school, and I mean, there's ginormous spaces over there to put another one of those, even if it wasn't a large scale municipal. But I mean, I know it's separate, but it's really not, it's all us, it's all the same folks paying the taxes, it's all ours, collectively. So, but I think the expansion of that would be the first thing that I would look at doing, and I don't know that, I'm not putting words in Steve's mouth, but I don't know if that was something he was to do, or is gonna do, or just something he and I were yapping about when we were yapping about the weather. But yeah, we talked about that system, and it does have all kinds of options for expansion, but until we can do something to decrease the BOD, there's not much we can really do with it, whether it's hooking up more restaurants or you know, my office or the gas station or what, anything, a home. You know, the restaurants, their flows really aren't that bad, you know, when you look at total flows, you know, compared to single family home. But again, if you don't have the ability to get into it because of the high BOD, you know, but I think that's the first problem, is figuring out how to lessen it, you know, with some obviously devices, and then whose financial responsibility is that gonna be to do that? I don't understand how the whole sewer district billing thingy works. I'm not in it. I don't pay any mind to it, but that would be, you know, but I guess it's all us. Like, I start thinking about, like, it benefits all of us to have all those things over here on Main Street, and wouldn't it benefit more of us if we could expand that footprint of that system to take in more properties? You know, I understand the library has some sewer issues. Did I hear that?
Probably.
They had to get a replacement septic system.
Yeah, so, and I think they realized that there was when the big dig happened on North Street, what was that, like 15 years ago? 12 years ago?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, that somebody thought ahead and laid in a line to get down there for the library, in the fire station, when we were still there at the fire station. But I don't know if there's room enough for the library. I don't know how they quantify the library, but.
I think I had a sidewalk conversation with Ian Albinson, not in preparation for this, but it was just a week or so ago, and it was like, until the BOD issue gets resolved, the
Yeah.
library needs to stay where it is, and
Yeah,
so.
yeah, and sometimes it's just that, thinking out of the box a little bit ahead of time, which is, you know, it's hard for all of us to do at times, but I don't know where it sits on the select board's large pile of things to do, but we still need a police station, and I don't think, I'm drawing a blank, who was the town administrator before you? Valerie, thank you. Yeah, she and I got chatting about it one day. She was over at the fire station for an interview of a prospective candidate, and we're talking about the police station thing, but that's the septic and the water and everything at the fire station is set up for the future police station. It's already big enough for whatever we do for a police station over there, big, small, 2 stories, 1 story, and, but again, somebody, you know, I don't know if it's Kevin Harper and his engineers or what, but somebody was thinking ahead, you know, 8-10 years ago, and said, yeah, let's build this. It was a little bit of money at the time to build that a little bit bigger, but yeah, taking advantage of those sorts of things. But yeah, I would definitely look at what we could do down over the hill here. I don't think there's any room to expand it as it is. It's just that indirect discharge permit, though, you know, it codifies how many gallons per day can go in there, but again, until that high strength effluent can be addressed, it's maxed. But,
Yeah, I got the impression from Jill, there's not room to put pre-treatment systems in place down there without really knowing, but yeah,
Yeah.
Bristol seems more suited for, with as relatively flat as the village is, for some sort of decentralized or low pressure
Yeah.
force main system with step tanks, things like that.
Yep.
For the entire village would be better than trying to get it all in one spot.
Yeah, or maybe several
Yeah.
spots, yeah. Yeah, I know, it's crazy to think about those sorts of things, because they're probably seem like years and years and years down the road, but
That's what we're here for.
yeah, here we are though, right? Yeah, yeah.
Any further questions for Kevin? Well, great. Thanks so much for stopping
Yeah,
by.
tell me to come back, I'm happy to. No, thanks for inviting me, Izzy,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
for
never
coming
been
by.
invited to a planning commission meeting, I feel like valued all of a sudden.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for doing what you guys do. Yeah. Come down here on a nice, beautiful Tuesday night.
Oh, man.
You're not missing anything, it's sprinkling and it's still cold.
Yeah, with your winter jacket.
I wore one today and a winter hat for work, yeah, so. Have a good day.
Okay.
This isn't just one for him, but I thought I got something in the mail maybe a year or two ago that was stated that the restaurants were going to be forced, whatever, to put in that pre-treatment, like the fat traps and whatever they got on, or grease traps.
So I don't know, there's been, I mean, when Valerie was here, and I've been in some very tangential side conversations about it, that, you know, the balance is, and I don't know how many, but I know at least some of the places down the street do have grease traps, which aren't as effective as you might think.
Yeah.
You know, because it has to do with the flow rate going
Right,
through
and
it, and it
sometimes
has to
goes
do with
over it or
water,
something, yeah.
water temperature as well,
Right.
going through it,
Okay.
so, but anyway, from,
And sizing for it to settle out properly.
right, yeah. But her whole quandary was, how do you match what needs to be done to reduce that versus without putting an unreasonable burden on the people that would have to pay for it? Because it's gonna end up being rates, a rate increase to generate the income to do the upgrades, if you will, minus grant money. I mean, whether you could get grant money.
What kind of
with
money
it.
are we talking about if for a restaurant to reduce the BOD to,
I don't know,
so that's an important question, I
Yeah,
just
I
don't know.
mean, but her concern was, we didn't talk dollars, but her concern was is the affordability of whatever it would take to, institute those changes, and then you'd go back and charge based on your theoretic, somehow you could charge people for their level of waste, if you will.
You talking about percentage of BOD or are you talking about water?
Yeah, I mean, if you got a higher BOD discharge, and, I mean, somebody else, you know, to be fair, you know, if you're the burden on the system,
Right, they need to carry
you
some
should
weight.
pay proportionately,
Yeah.
which, how do you do that with a non-metered system?
Yeah.
So anyway, and then, you know, there's probably not a single business down the street that's making money hand over fist.
I would think the restaurants would be your best bets, but probably not
But
even.
still, you know, so then you've got it, so her quandary was, when she was looking at some different things that she was considering or hearing people pitch, is how do you balance
Yeah, yeah.
that cost?
Well, I know for our building, we hardly use water, we have like, Pamela believes she heard when these springs went in, like, along, you know, back when, that we would pay for so many years and that would be it, or something like this, right? And now it's just, it goes up every year, and we pay quite a lot, which is good, we don't mind, I don't mind the septic costs, but it does keep going up, and I'm not sure why, because no more people are getting on, and. It's, you know, been in the ground for a long time now. I don't know, but it keeps getting more expensive.
Yeah, and it's, yeah.
There's fewer than 40 properties in the sewer district. I think it's like 35 or 36 or something like that. So, I mean, imagine any project that's $1 million or whatever. Those are the bond payers. Fewer than 40 property owners. So it doesn't matter like what the number is, the math is intimidating when it's only 40 payers, you know?
But that bond's paid, right? That original cost is paid by now.
Well, but if there's some big improvement project or something that would be bonded, then, or even if it's not a bonding situation, like, so for example, let's say there's some cost sharing with the restaurants, let's just say the dirtiest effluent needs to get cleaned up and the district pays part of that and the property owners pay part of that, or however it gets worked out. But, you know, whatever the costs are, it's only shared by, you know, 30 some odd payers.
I
So
understand.
it's a small pie.
And so your point, Slim, is there's always some level of operational cost,
Yeah,
you know,
some level.
over time with inflation, and, you know.
Yeah, but at first we were paying for the creation of the system, fine. But then you would think at some point, like already should have passed, we paid that part of it. But how long has it been, like 40 years or something? I mean, yeah, that just came out of my mouth, but something like that, it's a long time. Now the water flows, right? And there's some cleaning and pumping and stuff, but it doesn't add up to the cost of the system. And that was like a big deal, kind of, had to change a lot of things. But I'm just saying that's in my mind.
Yeah.
Since
How
I
do
paid
they,
my
how do they
check.
figure, how does it get figured who pays how much? Like the businesses on Main Street, or is everybody
That's a
paying the
share,
same?
right?
I'm sorry?
Well,
It used to be on flow, but it changed a bit. Now people get charged, especially commercial buildings, gets charged a certain rate. And then, so it's
Yeah.
a two-part thing, and then the second part depends on how much you actually use. It's measured by the water intake, but it's really for
The
your
water,
septic.
okay, so it's measured by water intake, okay. That's all,
So
that's what I wanted to know.
that's gotta go out unless you're pulling a fast one.
Yes, it's calculated as a percentage of the inflow they figure is outflow, so.
Into whatever building,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah,
the incoming meter sort of gets, used twice in a sense.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, okay.
and, what was I gonna say? Something you said, Slim. Yeah, anyway, it's a quandary because it is a small system. It's very effective, it's a good system.
It's fantastic, yeah,
But,
very
there
happy
are
with
a
it.
lot more, if you go back and you look in the town reports, Slim, you'll see the sewer reports. And there's quite a lot more regulation on it, and so there's testing, and it gets
Right.
pumped a lot, and the town, in order to have the expertise, this does require certain certifications and such that be maintained. The town has now outsourced that, so there's a sort of management cost to that, and that's where the cost comes in.
Yeah, just seems a little high. Anyway, moving right along. Thank you.
Okay. Let's pop back up and, we'll go back to organizational business, item 4.
I'm gonna say good night. Sorry to jump out early. Enjoy the rest of the meeting. And
Okay,
see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
So we
Your
had
turn.
started this discussion about review of policies and procedures. We're doing a search on what we have for doc. I think we said we have that, right?
We have the correct doc, it
Okay.
just needs some,
Is there any discussion on the document?
I personally still feel that the term limits are not
can we print this out?
critical,
Can you print this
and I would like those removed,
I'm just reading this one
but
time.
that's,
Thank you.
The term
that's my view, the 5-year term limit on chair and vice chair.
should be removed.
But yeah, that's what I think. I don't know if anybody else has other thoughts on that, because there are still the yearly elections, for that, and I know that it's hard to find people willing to do certain things, so, but that's just my opinion on that.
I agree with Rob on that. It's very hard to get people to do volunteer work these days. And, I know from doing it on several different boards that I see the same faces all the time. There's not a lot of new blood coming in to help out. I don't know how to get them to come in, so.
Slim, do you have any thoughts?
Well, the only, I have no thoughts, I mean, I agree with that, but saw that, brought it up at the end of last meeting about the support natural resource, it's at number 5 up in the very beginning mission, at the top of the, and you seem to think you had something to tell me about why that's even there. I mean, things change, I just don't know, I mean, I'm not against it 100% or anything, it's just like, why was that singled out? I mean, I can see being against large, heavy industry or something, but there's lots of other nice economies than those.
So those are, with seeing that 2020 town plan is in parentheses underneath that, would those have been bullets taken out of the town plan and just inserted?
That sounds likely, I guess.
Quite literally taken out of the purpose of the town plan.
Mhm.
It's the first 4 fundamental charges of the Bristol Planning Commission and the purpose of the town plan.
So it aligns. I think that was the intent, so it aligned with that.
Yeah. So we'll wait till we write another town plan, is what you're saying.
Oh, don't wait too long.
We got 3 years, 2.5.
We're
year and a
starting
half.
that pretty soon.
Yeah.
A year and a half on my timeline.
Okay, well, okay, that's fine, I mean, it's nice and all, I just don't know if it's I guess it's a town plan, fine, if that's what the town wants, then that's what we should put in there. But it just seems there's a lot of other very acceptable to all, green people here in Bristol that could also be stressed, like light industry, I mean, we should have unpolluting light industry or something, it'd be just as grand as this, right? I mean, I just didn't understand why it was singled out, but it's just from the town plan and.
It seems
fine.
like the first three kind of cover that.
A little bit, but they're more general though.
Yeah. I also find it interesting that it's inclusive human community. I don't know why the word human is in there, but
No animals.
no,
No
I'm
horses.
feeding my cat.
No horses
seems kind
downtown.
seems kind of odd.
A famous garbage wagon, come on.
I still
Recycle.
haven't seen that.
Oh, really?
No.
Friday morning.
Oh, I'm never here. That makes sense.
Do you have any other thoughts or comments about either Rob's suggestion or other things in the policies and procedures, Melissa?
No, I did. I was wondering, does anyone know? I saw that section where about public comment that it can be sent in written and read into the minutes that the person making the comment doesn't have to be here. I doubt that anybody knows that because I didn't know that. I mean, anybody in Bristol, do they know that? That might be something we can kind of make an effort to let people know in case they can't make a meeting. If they have some comment, they can send it to us.
Okay, we have had that occur in the past where people have
Yeah.
sent in letter and comments.
Anything
But
that's
I'm just-
getting a little dicey, some neighbors come in sometimes.
Yeah, I just kind of wonder if it's, and that common a knowledge that you can do that. And I think it did say in there that you use the discretion as to what's read into the minutes, I think. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, Bill?
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, I support Rob's proposal to eliminate the 5-year term.
Any other thoughts on anything else this is our opportunity to air our laundry as to any of the
What do you think
changes.
about that 5-year plan, Chairman?
My name's not up on the list here yet. Oh, maybe it is because John's not here. I am not aware, not that I've looked very far, of any other local group, board, commission that has that restriction. So, I mean, in the past, there has been concern about that as to, it's easy to say, well, you can vote them out anytime, but the power of incumbency is really strong. And, we as a board right now, I think get along pretty well. We have a wide, diverse point of view collectively, but we communicate very well with that. And today it doesn't seem to be a problem, but obviously it was at some point that it was in there. So, do I want to be chairman forever? No. I'm not sure about it, even after this year. So.
Well, we don't want to change it to forced terms. We'll make you stay in.
Yeah, no, you definitely want to do that. So, I don't have a strong opinion either way. I can see the benefits either way, but like I said, it is kind of an anomaly for this board commission, what do you wanna call it, to have that requirement.
Any other thoughts
That's
or
the end of it.
comments?
So I think we've heard from everybody. John is off the air.
Yeah.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I make 6 people. We need 6 people to vote, act on it, so if we are done the discussion phase, I guess we should consider any action that anybody desires to propose.
I propose we remove the term limits for chair and vice chair in the document.
Second
There's a
on that,
second.
if that's a move to do something.
So, Melissa seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Somebody's opposed. Any abstentions?
Some toddler.
Okay, so the motion's carried. Is there any other actions to consider?
We should, it will automatically be revised with the date and
Let's hope so.
noted, correct? So we should have to make a motion about that, for that cleanup.
I would think that's a technicality that,
Okay,
I'll do a little document cleanup, I saw
Yeah,
some
she-
typos,
if she does it, she'll do a better job than I did.
yeah.
do my best.
Okay,
There's a lot of typos I found in the UDR after it got printed and approved, so.
so we'll, consider that complete. That'll drop us down to item 6, continuing business, infrastructure, municipal capacity, and long-term planning.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think was originally put there to follow up with whatever like Kevin was gonna provide us with. Okay,
Yeah, so in the documents for this meeting, I had put the section on utilities and infrastructure from the town plan for review. I thought that'd be a good place to start on kind of taking what Kevin has talked about, what Jill has talked about, and what we have in the town plan currently for utilities, and starting a discussion there on kind of the forward-looking vision, as Kevin was talking about the 8, 10, 15-year plan when it comes to utilities. We know the wastewater system has potential for capacity, but is dealing with the UD issue. We have the water supply system that could open up housing. There's a connection down on Lovers Lane that opens up housing, so figured this would be a,
So what are the limiting factors within the town plan, or what could the town plan do to enable that? I'm assuming we're talking about from a plans aspect, not a zoning aspect.
yeah, plan aspect. I feel like the goals and policies, right now, the policies that encourage utility development projects to work with affected landowners and so ensuring that new water and sewage uses meet state-approved safe water standards, which already gets kind of taken care of with the fact that if you're doing anything with the development with any bedrooms, you have to provide your wastewater state permitting. But in terms of planning, we have our soil and septic suitability maps. But after this conversation with Kevin LaRose, there might be a possibility for envisioning where new things could happen for septic in Bristol, of possibly doing a feasibility study on that. There was a 2018 engineering report for the wastewater system, and bringing that into the conversation, but I wanted to open up the floor to the planning commission for, thoughts on Jill's conversation and Kevin's on what was sparking for,
So I wouldn't limit it to town plan. I would also keep in mind the zoning reg aspect for two reasons. One would be, we're kind of dancing around what can we do more to enhance housing in the next 3 years, 2 to 3 years, couple of years probably. And then also think about zoning as a reaction to the town plan, so even though the town plan is supposed to drive, the new town plan is supposed to drive a new set of regulations, have some concept of how you regulate that may lend language to the town plan, so I wouldn't, so.
in that case, I've been thinking a lot about planned unit developments and how they're written in the zoning regulations as they are part of a subdivision. They are an aspect of a subdivision. If you have land, you can use PUD provisions, to increase your density allotment, or not increase your density, but, to play with the dimensional standards of a traditional district in order to fit housing in a more clustered, way and more dense, and that inherently can encourage using shared utilities, shared septic, shared water. Yet having it with the subdivision inherently, I think, brings people into thinking that they're subdividing their land. And a planned unit development, you could, the co-housing, for example, that was 3 lots that were merged into one, that's not a subdivision. It's quite the opposite, you're taking 3 parcels and creating one new one. So I've been thinking a lot about planned unit developments and how do we encourage that, in Bristol, in the downtown. There was a recent one just off North Street and Pine Street, that used the PUD, subdivision regs to get, 2 duplexes and 2 new single-family homes. There's also the issue of the village is quite dense already and quite compact. There's not much land to really push PUDs here, but in the kind of outskirts, Lover's Lane, down off Plank Road a little bit more, those areas of where do we see future development happening and how do we encourage the utilities in order to allow for said development.
Any thoughts?
It's a hard one to, I mean, you can encourage it and say we encourage this, but I don't see how you could make something that would be enforceable or anything like that to force it, you know?
Yeah.
And it all ultimately, like with everything, comes down to cost, and if there's cost benefit or it makes sense to do, it will usually get done. But if it's going to be overly burdensome or very heavy cost laden, that's the stuff that kills projects, you know?
Yeah.
And as far as the PUDs go, co-housing's a bit of an outlier on everything, you know? That's not, well, it's dense, maybe not the poster child for all future development, because it is limited to some aspects in terms of what's there and what can be there in terms of housing sizing and everything else. So that's a tough one to
Yeah.
shoehorn
It
in,
would
which
be
is,
encouraging, it would, at some,
Yeah.
not forcing, but it's an encouraging situation, you know, for a PUD, they're already encouraged. So we would have to be able to supply the utilities, right? Is that what we're basically talking about, where we can do this and get water, sewage that way? The state regs don't seem to give us a whole lot of leeway, unfortunately. well, Bristol should really be favored, many parts of Bristol anyway you'd think favored. You gave us a couple of tips, about pressure or, the ways to reduce the space necessary so that more housing can get into a smaller, square footage, like, big one was eliminating the margins, that's a big one. If you have the one septic system, you have a lot of houses on a much lesser property. On Plank Road, that's nice and close to the village, or, whatever, those seem like they're good ideas to me, wherever the soils are suitable to make it most affordable, I would think a developer would think that's a really, how about that, I don't know the name of it, but just up North Street? It's taken him quite a few years to fill up, but it looks like he's got
Cottage Lane,
cottage lanes, yeah,
I think.
something
Park.
Cottage
Yeah.
Park, that's it, and, they're quite close. They're doing something to have, I guess, boundaries you must have a very good boundary there, but those houses are close. So,
That may have been with a PUD, because those were like, almost like condo lots where I think they got the lot that just the house is in and all the rest of it is shared
yeah,
common land.
must be, I think. So, but things like that seem like they worked right in town there, and that was, of course, a sort of a unique parcel, an open parcel of the village, but just stepping outside, then there's plenty of that, I mean, what are we talking about here, how to get it done, what we need to write in the plan or the regs to get it done?
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
planned unit developments are favored, and there's possibilities for those already. I don't know, I'd like to see some, you could see them, they could be like the one in town is very high end, and they could make them also very affordable, it seems, and they could work, so. I don't know what we need to encourage, how to encourage them anymore.
Bill, do you have any thoughts?
Plenty, but,
Is he on still?
mute? Maybe?
Um,
Oh,
There he goes.
there
yeah, I think we got some good ideas tonight about how we can make better use of septic. It was interesting, the thoughts about using some of the common areas for the village or town that are heavily gravel soils for a larger system. That's something to consider. On the other hand, I think we can probably do a lot more with the village lots we have, uh, even with our existing home sites, our existing lot sizes, and getting a design of septic that's can handle a little more effluent. The pressurized system was interesting to me. Costs more up front, as Kevin noted, and we probably knew already, but it might be worth it in creating more capacity.
Thanks. Can you put it to the what's it called, gallery view or whatever, if we're not showing the document? Shannon, do you have it? What's your thoughts?
Well, my thought, we've been working really hard at trying to get our density in Bristol, but it is a limited space, and I think at some point, despite what the state would like us to do, I think we should have to start thinking about allowing some development, moving away from the village. That, if you really want to bring people in, younger families, not everybody wants to be crammed in to their neighbors, next door to neighbors. They don't want to be able to hand their coffee cup out the window to the next door neighbor. So I think that has to be a consideration that, we spend a lot of time on this. I think we're opening up as much as we can. But at some point, we're gonna hit a limit, and then where do we go? That's my main concerns. We're working really hard on this, and I think we're gonna do our best. But I think you said eventually we're gonna have that conversation about what happens when we're at max utilities, max, water capacity, max sewer, land. There's only so much land in the village. So, it'll have to be talked about. That's my biggest concern.
Thank you. And Melissa?
I don't know, my concern is still affordability. People are still building good-sized homes when a lot of people want something small. And I don't know how we can encourage that more. We can get more smaller homes, in an area of land. I don't even know. Everybody seems to have their own opinion of what affordable is. So, I just don't know. It seems like shared septic and smaller homes kind of make the most sense.
Okay, thank you. If I can, I think, I'll start with the town plan. I think if, as we write the section, particularly with wastewater, which is a pretty small paragraph in the town plan currently, I think the discussion needs to start looking at incentivizing recognized systems like PUDs or shared systems. This is a visionary document, but here's our vision is you gotta put more people onto, or more houses onto a given system for the economy of scale or conservation of land, or how we wanna package that. And talk about some of those things in Britain and let them bubble up, even though, I'm supposed to get bogged down in details, but to have this discussion, whether it's a paragraph or what, probably not anymore, about here's some things that can break the mold type thing. And then when you start talking about regulations, whether it's what we want to do in the next year or so, or whatever we do based on the new town plan is, and I know this, it seems to me that this planning commission has been hesitant to make zoning regs more complicated, which I understand that the layperson gets inundated with code and regulations and whatnot, but I think there's no incentive right now to consider those things, particularly from a developer's point of view. So if you start incentivizing by, you can add another, if you're doing this, you can add another unit. If you're doing this, you can reduce lot sizes beyond what we've already said. And it starts creating tiers to drive development in the way that you want it to, not only from where the houses are plunked down, but how you want different systems to be utilized as well. So I think the world gets more complicated, unfortunately. Maybe we need to get more complicated too, if we really want to start. Because right now, there's a couple examples, and maybe there's a whole lot more going on that we or I don't see, just because I have a very peripheral perspective of all this, but I don't see PUDs getting used much at all. And the one that Kevin mentioned earlier today that was considered tonight, it was considered a PUD, I wasn't aware of it, so maybe I'm just not aware of what these things are being set up as. And that may be just my unawareness, but it also may not be that we don't have things structured, or the vision or the vision of whoever the developer might be isn't that they're utilizing these things to the maximum that they could for whatever reason. And, we've got to guide that somehow, whether it's starts in the town plan and then it converts into zoning regs.
So easy, could you fill in like how many people are coming in using the term PUD when they're making a development? I mean, is that happening, or did you not know?
The last person to use the plan unit development application was Adam and Amber Thomas, and they started their application in 2021, 2022, and it took them until this January to get it approved because there was issue with the water line that held them up and getting water connections, but that was the last PUD.
So not so many, and
Not so many.
they're problematical, or did they just have a problem that they're not always
That-
problematical?
That situation, they were having an issue with water connection, of connecting, to the curb cut, getting the connections necessary. But the reason why I brought PUDs up is because in zoning regs, PUDs are, when you look on the section of PUDs, it is governed by the subdivision regs. So if someone was to subdivide, it's just a little section, section 3, PUD. You can use PUDs as a way to get dimensional relief or to cluster, but I don't think it's truly fleshed out in a way that like people are going to be able to fully utilize that to the max potential of a planned unit development, simply because it's kind of hidden in subdivision of,
I see.
and that's my point of bringing it up, is that if we want to encourage planned unit developments, I think there's more that can be done to pull them out of just a simple subdivision, even though a planned unit development is, you are using subdivision, like you have the density allowance and dimensional standards. I had a conversation with Jason Barnard, who was working on that planned unit application. He's like, I thought this was a conditional use, and I was like, no, this is a subdivision application using planned unit development relief, but it's still a subdivision. So I think there's some possibilities there to further encourage planned unit developments by
Shining a light on it a little.
shedding a light on it a little bit more and kind of calling it out and offering ways in the town plan of like how planned unit developments could work, of cluster developments, even though co-housing might be an anomaly, but kind of putting a spotlight on how a potential developer could come in, might have just a plot of land and could put more housing here by using these provisions that we've provided. And I think,
It's for.
yeah, I feel like putting a spotlight on what's there and elaborating.
One of the things as we're talking about this is that like we just went through all of the densification of some of these zones and everything else, so in my mind, we're going one or two steps beyond what everybody just thought was acceptable for these areas if we start doing that sort of stuff, because that's really, like Kevin said, how you make that attractive is by incentivizing it. So if you're doing that, then you're going beyond, and there's a lot to that, because then because it's planned and laid out theoretically in a certain way, it's okay that it's that denser than, say, the traditional layout or subdivision, whatever you wanna call it, or is that too much?
Well, one of the forming ideas, I think, of PUDs was to have an open park, so it would look nice and, be nice and all that. That would be also a nice place for your septic, so that's the.
But if you increase the density, which traditionally what happens unless there's, a percentage of set aside in there and all that sort of stuff, it just gets more dense without not necessarily open land or set aside conservation. If you're doing that in the middle of the town, what are you really gaining,
Yeah, well, I don't think that's just a village thing, really,
Yeah,
right?
but-
Too much the PUD part, I mean, where does the village stop going up North Street, by the way? I mean, is it Plank Road or something, or the?
Yeah, it's, I think the,
Village planning area ends,
I
a
think it
little
went to
bit,
Plank.
yeah, ends just before Hazel Road. The village planning area,
Hazel Road, that's up by the
greenhouses, yep.
but only on the east side, right? I think on the west side of North Street, it stops at Plank, I thought.
Yep, it stops like right before Burpee on Plank.
Okay. So it
The
goes all way
village planning
down there.
area,
Right, but I thought it went up north, not across North Street, going north of Plank Road, off from my memory.
I don't know if people on Zoom can see this. I could pull up the PDF too, but this is Hazel Road. right here.
Yeah.
Ish. So the village planning area goes up North Street past Plank. and
To
goes up.
Hazel Road and a little notch, okay. So that's just almost to the rescue station.
Unless I'm reading the map wrong.
Yeah, no, I was just confused because I didn't remember, may I see that?
Yeah, I'll pull it up for the folks on Zoom.
I didn't remember that much being HDR there. I thought it did not go across Plank Road in my memory.
So, yeah, cause it also goes down Plank Road, right?
Yeah, I didn't think it went that far down Plank
I think
Road.
there's a different, there's
HDR.
another district down through Plank Road.
Yeah,
Is that the town plan or is that our latest?
That's zoning
regs?
regs.
Zoning districts.
Alright, folks, so we're
HDR.
talking village planning area.
There you go. Right there.
no, yeah, I didn't think that went up there. It was what we had agreed upon. I didn't think that.
Agreed.
Something to discuss.
So the village planning area is that yellow black dash line. The thing I think we're talking about is HDR doesn't go that far.
Yeah, I didn't think HDR went across Plank Road.
Clearly says
Yeah.
so though.
It does on that, but I don't think the
But
town
in
was.
reality, you think this is wrong or that's
Yeah,
wrong?
I
Oh.
think, well, that is that.
Yeah, yeah, I know, but I'm saying, so that's, yeah, cause
I don't think that's what we had
this is not what I
agreed to
thought.
when we did those tweaks to the mapping.
Cause isn't that still, I can't remember the name of it, and I can't, village
R1.
residential, it's not VR, is it?
No,
It
it's,
says HDR for that color here.
Yeah, for that color, but
That is something I can look into on,
yeah,
cause I thought it was still R1 on the other side.
see what that lighter blue is up against the mountain?
That's
this
the-
is village residential here.
Yeah,
um,
that's at the Plank Road, at least part of the Plank Road was that.
oh, village residential.
This map came from regional planning?
I don't think I have
Oh, yeah.
that. Sorry to get distracted.
No, that's a good point, is,
I'm fairly sure that's not what we had agreed to, but I could be wrong. I've been wrong plenty.
This is the 2020 regs.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I didn't think we converted all of that to HDR.
We converted some of it to a denser, or to, what did we do? Did something,
We-
some part of Plank Road there,
yeah, we made it more dense.
yeah.
Alright,
Just a part of it, it stopped somewhere. Cause you were talking about the change, you know,
Right.
density as you come in, it should be a little more, you're right, good idea, you thought, so, fine, yes, but so that's what I just remember talking about that. Some got denser, some didn't.
I can check into that because if that should be remedied. But.
where were we?
So we were kind of summarizing our comments to work towards new town plan language as far as primarily wastewater is concerned, and potentially zoning regs. I'm not sure if we had gone around the table, there was a few comments, and then,
We're talking about PUDs.
Yeah, cause this is what I remember, right?
Yeah. Yeah, where just south of the road, it was expanding
Right, that one little block.
that one section,
Yeah.
not all village residential.
That's what I remember. I can't remember all our reasoning, but.
Yeah.
I'll also check with the GIS person at, Regional Planning Commission and see if there was an error in the color coding of the maps.
Let me see if I can pull out
We'd
some
have
of
to
the-
go back through our notes and
Yeah.
meetings and.
Let me pull out some, because, let me pull out some stuff and see if I can make sense, I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, I'll also just double check with RPC.
Yeah. Probably Adam would be the one to check with,
Yep,
because he's the one that generated the,
Yeah, he was who was working
He
with
was
us on all
on it.
that.
generated the verbiage on the changes and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, I can check with him and the GIS person who provided these maps. She's new and works from Massachusetts, I believe.
Is that a long commute?
Work from home. But yeah, I can double check on that.
Okay. Do you have any, have we provided you with some fodder?
Definitely, definitely a start for infrastructure. I think there's a lot more discussion to be had down the line as we do, start to get ready to rewriting this. This is just mostly a general, dipping the toe into the septic pond.
It's where Kennedy takes his grandkids. Okay, so we'll move on to administrative matters. We have a set of minutes from April 18th to consider.
Yes.
See anything?
Anybody have any comments? Okay.
I do have an update on the interim bylaw. I'm still awaiting Adam to get back to me with feedback. I've been hounding him, and I went to their office and I hand delivered. And I said, will you please look at this?
Oh, because regional planning has to review it?
No, I just wanted, I wanted their feedback.
Okay,
Not
That's
because
fair.
they have to, but just in terms of
Yes.
writing zoning regs.
that's probably a good point.
Yeah.
Keep them happy. Okay, hearing, then entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
And any discussion? Slim seconds, by the way. Hearing none, is no discussion, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Abstaining.
I'm abstaining because I wasn't there.
Okay, one abstention, Shannon. Still passes, I would say. Move on to the PZA report. That's,
Can I ask a question for even say order? I think it was this last one that went to the DRB about a variance for the
Oh, a
setback
waiver.
of the, or a waiver
Yep.
for
So-
the setback rule. I just wondered how that transpired or.
So with that, in the regulations, it's written that in the HDR, the accessory setback for the front yard is 60 feet because it's 20 feet behind the principal structure. State statute 4412 subsection E, getting specific with it, puts the review criteria, dimensional controls, all that for ADUs to be the same as a single family dwelling, which would be the principal setback of 40 feet. That ADU, when I originally approved it, Their location was completely different from when, they put their markers for the location that they were gonna build it.
Okay,
So I went out and I did an inspection, I said, oh, you're not at the 60-foot accessory setback. But, and then that whole permit had to be kind of revisited, due to the
yeah.
change in location
Yeah.
and.
As it should be.
Yeah, and so they, after review of the regulations, they were 42 feet from the center line. Using state statute 4412 subsection E, they were reviewed under the principal setback of 40 feet. So they're within, which is,
So, once again, the state regs just kind of overwhelm whatever we thought was appropriate for this. Cause we thought maybe it'd be better to make it back in order to be subservient, right? But I guess that doesn't fly.
So a second structure is not considered accessory, since it's not a primary dwelling?
an ADU falls under these, but like a garage would be an accessory structure.
Oh,
It
is
would
this just
have-
a garage?
This is an ADU.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah. So that I thought we wrote down there should be 20 feet behind the primary structure,
For an accessory,
fitting it into the subservient
yeah,
look. But,
state statute has it as the same controls.
so I'm saying that might as well just be erased out of our,
Yeah, but you can have it for an accessory building if you want the garage to be behind, that's fine.
okay.
Any
Yeah, yeah.
ADUs have to be, yeah,
It's consistent from their point of view with the, but from the state's point of view. So I get why they would, that's, okay, so that means anybody can have a ADU built at the same frontage as their building.
So what I heard is they got a permit, and for whatever reason, they didn't build where the permit said they could build.
yeah.
And then they went back to the DRB for a waiver.
That's,
I told them when I originally met with them, I was like, you don't meet the setbacks of 60 feet, so you have to go for a waiver if you wanna build in your location. That prompted a review of zoning regulations, and I talked with the RPC, who brought up the 4412 to me.
Which, that's not a change from when we went through all of our ADU stuff with our last fall with Adam, right? That's still the original ADU bill from a year ago?
I believe so.
Yeah, so nothing from the.
So when we were going through all of that, I don't remember that being the conversation with
never,
Adam,
never once.
that an ADU would not be applicable to the accessory.
Well, we knew some of the things you couldn't change because it didn't apply to the primary dwelling.
Right.
But we never considered the setback part. We considered whether we put it to make it subservient. So, back over.
So, yeah,
So, but obviously that can be changed, because they got okay for this, at 2 feet behind the building.
so, yeah, walk through the process again, I don't quite understand what's going on here.
So they got a building permit last August with a location that was close to their barn, tucked away behind the frontage requirements for the 60, which the 60-foot requirement. They did their site markings, and I was made aware of this and asked to kind of review it by a neighbor. And so I went out and reviewed it and I said, you're not where you said you were gonna build the permit. That's not correct. If you wanna build a permit, you have to get a waiver for that location. In talking with Kevin Brown, he said in order to get a waiver, you need a whole new application. You can't give a waiver to a previously approved application, which is true. So they had to reapply. In the reapplication process, that's where all the zoning regs were reviewed and our zoning regs, state regs. And that's where that subsection E comes in.
So this is the DRB that did they reviewed it as a waiver?
They never reviewed it as a waiver.
That was, I just read that in the paper or something, that was what was asked for at some point,
Yeah, it was,
so.
yeah, it was a minor review for a waiver, so it doesn't, it was in front for forum.
Front portfolio, maybe.
But that meeting got canceled because I met with RPC to actually talk about floodplain regulations and flood maps, but I took the opportunity while I was there to ask a bunch of questions about zoning regulations. And to ask for some clarification on this situation, and that's when the state statute of,
So they have a lawyer or somebody knowledgeable about state statutes themselves or somebody, right, brought this up saying, no, we can do this because the state says.
the applicant didn't, RPC.
So they just moved it, there was no, when they moved it from where they were permitted, it wasn't because of, they thought they could do it there? Based on state statute?
No, they didn't know about state statute, they just had a different
They
location.
changed it for some reason.
Yeah, because of the, it's a ADU accessible, so they're dealing with a ramp and just like flat land and the
Good
topography.
reason, sure, yeah.
So the location was different from what was approved of the permit, I went and I reviewed it and I said, you can't do that without getting a new permit.
Sure, or at least a variance you thought, but then Brown said, no, it has to be a new permit.
It has to be a new
They
permit, it
got
was the
new
first one.
permit with the new location,
Mhm.
and it had to be approved because the state statute says ... You know, you can't do anything different for an ADU.
Yeah.
And that includes the setback.
Yeah.
We can't do it. It's just like we can't like have, well, we had some other ideas that were unavoidable, yeah, I mean, you couldn't do it, right? I can't remember what we talked about, but we wanted to do a couple of things to keep them subservient in truth. But that surprises me a little bit, but, I guess that's what it is, so.
Yeah, and I ran that by Kevin Brown and I said, this is what I found and this is what it reads, and he agreed with my, like, with the state statute.
The state overrides our attempt
So,
to
yeah,
change. Doesn't sound right, but. Also
a
sort of.
bylaw shall require a single-family dwelling with an accessory dwelling unit to be subject to the same review, dimensional, or other controls as required for a single-family dwelling without an accessory dwelling unit. So if we have setbacks on an accessory structure,
So, I think with the, I just found Kevin's commentary, and what it was if it's just an accessory structure, it needs to meet the accessory setbacks. If it's an accessory structure with an ADU, it only needs to meet the house setbacks, the principal structure setbacks. So as soon as you put an ADU in a second structure, it is now only subject to your principal setbacks, is what his legal commentary was on the review of that.
What kind of I think up to being just the structure? I mean, could you have an ADU on the ground floor and a storage unit upstairs? And that's an accessory, my shed's upstairs.
Yeah, if you have a garage and put an ADU above it, or vice
Yeah, that's
versa.
fine, but vice versa, so
But if you have
funnier.
if you have an
You
existing.
wouldn't have a garage upstairs, ever.
If you have an
No,
But you
existing,
could have,
like that's if it's a new build, if it's an existing,
well, new buildings we're talking about here, right? In the brand new building that
Yeah.
they're putting up there, right? And I don't know, that seems like one of those funny loopholes that allow people to, not make it very subservient and crowd things up a little bit, maybe, I don't know. But that's just my sense of aesthetics, I guess.
And that's my personal interpretation was that a second smaller living unit is accessory to the primary structure, especially in scale, which would mean it would be an accessory, in my interpretation, but I am not
Or
the town
subservient.
or a legal entity to
Well,
rule
it's-
on that.
Kevin Brown.
Yeah,
Huh.
So, yeah, So the thing I'm having trouble separating is you put an ADU outside of your house, it's in an accessory structure.
That's where I was on it, but with that clause of no more restrictive than a single family house means that all bets are off. It was how I'm seeing the way it's
Back
being
to structure
interpreted.
versus use.
Yeah,
right?
but so,
You know, structure's the building, but the use, it changes things sometimes, right? Obviously,
Yeah,
but. I guess-
criteria for conversion of an existing detached non-residential building to habitable space for an accessory dwelling unit. So that's existing.
Yeah,
This thing, this thing doesn't discuss a new one. And that goes back to that do loop we had, is if you build a new building, you can't make it into an accessory dwelling unit until you have another permit. Remember that whole conversation?
mhm. Well, to change of use, you would need sometimes to get a okay for those, some changes in use, yeah, it's typical.
That's what people have been getting, if
As
they
a
have an existing
permitted
barn and they
use.
wanna change the second floor, they have to get a change of use of the second floor to an ADU.
Pertinent to
It's only
this.
fair, if somebody might wanna put a disco in, you'd have to say no. Perhaps, and if somebody wanted to change the use to a disco, you might say no.
I like the disco.
Yeah, but there's regs.
Yes, yes.
Okay, pick something else. A tannery, and you'd probably say no. right?
Yeah.
So the use is very key.
When I talked with RPC, I expressed some frustration on state statute on ADUs,
Sure.
because it's,
Well,
when I first reviewed this permit, I reviewed it as an accessory structure, an ADU is an accessory structure. It was this permit that brought up the state statute. In my mind, an accessory dwelling is an accessory structure.
So you can't, so according to this thing though, you can't put an ADU in a new accessory structure. It doesn't talk about that. So you have to build an accessory structure first and then put the ADU in. Because it talks about, so the first thing, the bylaw shall require a single-family dwelling with an accessory dwelling unit to be subject to the same, where am I? So required to be with an accessory dwelling unit that is subject to the same review without what?
Does this mean they can make it as taller perhaps than we wanted or something, and all these things are changed?
So the select board reduced the size of an accessory structure, both in footprint and elevation,
Yeah,
and as part of this as well, so I don't know why.
why any of that is any good, cause we can build it bigger than a 900 square foot house, obviously, or whatever, right?
Well, for an accessory structure though.
Ah, okay, yeah. You can build a bigger accessory structure too, right? There's no limitation on that, I thought.
No, there
They have
is.
a big
There's
garage.
state
on.
statute on the size of an ADU, it's 900 square feet
Yeah, but
Minimum,
no,
maximum.
because we had it at 1,000 square feet at
we
one.
did have it as
I
that,
thought it changed back to
And it's-
900.
no,
That was maximum. Mm.
not to exceed 30%
Right,
or 900.
Mhm.
So 900's the low, large threshold.
well, it's the maximum if you have a smaller house on the property that you're
Right.
living in, whatever, yeah. So if you had a 1,000 square foot house, you could still have a 900 ADU like this. Yeah, that makes sense. But we have very few limitations on
It's the,
primary structures, houses. Now, this seems to be a reduction of our ability to regulate the ADU structures.
Well, it goes back to that it goes back to the whole cat and mouse game that you can't put an ADU in a new building,
In a new accessory structure.
accessory
So you have
structure.
to, so anything new has to be built ADU.
So the
New.
criteria for conversion of an existing detached, non-residential building is habitable space for an accessory dwelling unit shall not be more restrictive than the criteria used for a single-family dwelling without an accessory dwelling unit. And you can't, it doesn't say new or existing, it says existing.
Right.
So the whole thing talks about
It's conversion,
is conversion.
it's conversion and adding into existing structure, and the only other thing is that it says a single-family dwelling with an accessory dwelling unit, same review dimensional as one without. And I think that's where we're getting stuck before of what if it's all new,
Yeah.
which it doesn't touch on. You hang your hat on they hang their hat on the interpretation that it's no more restricted than a single family home.
Yeah, so you can put it right up front. This is what happened.
But it's not existing. The only way you can have it existing is if you get a permit to build an outbuilding. And then get an ADU for it, permit for it,
You modify it.
which is bizarre, but
So you can't just build an ADU? Is that what
Well-
you're saying? You can't build a new, here's this new building, it's gonna be an ADU,
That's,
my house.
I mean, people have done that, haven't they? Just put up only an ADU?
Yeah, just, Really yeah.
could you build one
mean-
new in a house?
There's like tiny homes that are ADUs, like
Yeah,
someone brings in a tiny house trailer that's an accessory dwelling unit.
And puts it on an existing lot with an existing house?
That happened behind the greenhouses. Because they did just have that as a trailer, and I said, well, no one can live in there. You can't have a trailer that was lived in.
We used to go trailer, you are now an ADU?
Well, they had to be clearly subordinate to in the regulations, there's
Yeah, yeah.
criteria, so they had to be subordinate to the single family by having lesser bedrooms, under 900 square feet. The owner lives on the property,
Mhm.
and they have to have sufficient wastewater capacity and meet setbacks and
So they had their own septic system for this thing, or they plugged into the existing one, the
plug into
trailer?
the existing.
Okay.
Of course, we had a lot of Garfield Streetism all intertwined with all this at the same
Oh,
time.
yeah, I'm still.
I will say Adam is coming next meeting to talk about future land use mapping. So this can be brought up to him.
Side tangent.
Every month.
Okay.
But that's the reason you have that approval.
Yeah, that's.
So it was a permit,
Are they building a accessory building and then putting in a ADU up there, or what? It's an ADU, I thought, I read. Just says accessory
Accessory
dwelling,
dwelling unit.
so they're just building a standalone accessory dwelling unit?
Yep.
Well, there you go,
It's just.
you can do it. And I think you should be able to do it, obviously.
well, the issue, what I heard, well, the issue is what the setback is.
Right, yeah,
Not whether they could put an ADU in.
right, so, but it's just like building your, anything, I guess, your original house.
Any other questions to AZ about
I don't know if that's even so bad, though. Okay.
Any other questions for me?
No, thank you very much.
Any miscellaneous correspondence?
Not really.
Okay. Well, I had a question, and it's just for personal information, but 1, 2, 3, 4 permits down, it just says North Street through, is there a house number on that? Or single family dwelling? Actually, there's the next one down is just.
Oh, no, there is not yet. It's right next to 139. It was a subdivision. It's lot 2 of that subdivision, so an E91 address has not been assigned yet, but it's
Okay.
near 139 North Street. And then are you talking about 00 Briggs Hill as well?
00 Briggs Hill and then Stony Hill Road.
Stony Hill Road is across the street from Livingston Farm. It's that cornfield where he has that little curb cut. There's no emergency address there because there's no structure for emergency.
Is that on 116 or on,
Corner of 116 and 117.
yeah,
And then 00 Briggs Hill, it's quite literally you go up Briggs Hill and then where that says road closed, there's a little driveway. And some folks bought the parcels there and wanna build a shed. Because they eventually wanna build a house,
Yeah,
so they,
so that part of Briggs Hill
Start
can be open for
the ADU.
business. End of the
Okay.
road.
but, yeah. I'm asking for more clarification from RPC on what state is saying with ADUs, so that the review for local ADU regulations aligns and makes sense,
Yeah.
so it's not conflicting.
The unfortunate thing with this whole thing is it was the most volatile topic throughout our zoning reg changes when we did the bylaw modernization updates and stuff. It was the most volatile thing, and I'm not so sure there were certain people that cranked to stew, but and it's largely a by right use from the state, so.
Oh, it's also a by right use in our zoning regulations, in the section on ADUs. So it's a section, and then the last sentence is, any accessory dwelling unit, new or existing, that meets the above conditions is a permitted use in all districts.
Which one of those conditions is the 20-foot setback from the primary? C. So,
Okay, well, entertain a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Anybody second it?
I second it.
Slim,
There.
Slim seconds, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Thank you very much.
All right,
Good night.
thanks, good night.
Right.